Hi everyone, my name is Mauricio Lastres and today I'm here to review the Fanatic CSL Elite load cell pedals. I'm not usually a reviewer, but I just felt absolutely compelled to do so this time because, I'll just let it out of the bag. I love these pedals. I'm super excited about them. I've been waiting for them ever since I pre-ordered them, and once I got them, they exceeded my expectations. They're everything I wanted, and I wanted to share my experience with you and maybe give a little bit of feedback too of why they're so excellent, and maybe a little bit of a different perspective as to why. So a little bit of background about me. I've been racing cars for several years now. Last year I was racing in the United States Touring Car Championship, and this year I've also started coaching. I work at Exotics Racing in Los Angeles, so if you live in the area, come by. It's a lot of fun. We have excellent cars, and it's just an amazing time. And then also been doing some private coaching on special weekends, track days and things like that. And I've also been sim racing for a very long time. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, it's actually been 20 years. I started sim racing with Papyrus and NASCAR Racing 2, which was released in fall of 1996, I think. So it's been a long time. And then finally, professionally, I'm also a mechanical engineer. I have a master's degree from Cal in mechanical engineering. I work as a design engineer, working on different types of assemblies and machinery and things of that nature. So I think I have a little bit of a different perspective to give on these pedals. So let's talk about them. So like I said, I've been sim racing for a long time and realistically never had a reason to upgrade my equipment. I was always really satisfied with my pace and my competitiveness. But most recently, there was that Mazda shootout combine on iRacing, and that's what really kind of got to me because I missed the top 40 by just a couple tenths, and I was really analyzing my driving very closely at that time, and I really feel, especially now actually owning them and having tested them for a day, that would have made the difference. I think that the weakness was obviously in my braking, and more importantly the release of my braking, and I feel like the load cell pedal really is a great improvement. Up till now I've had the Logitech G25 and right now I have the G27, which I have here in San Diego, and just the potentiometer just wasn't cutting it for me. I know that some guys are really fast on it, but the brake release was where I was struggling. So design-wise, not only is it much more refined, I also like how they implemented the adjustments into the pedals and how you can move the pedals closer to each other. It's just a very simple design, which I really appreciate. And I think that they're going to be very reliable long-term. And anything that fails on them, I think it's going to be a lot easier to fix. I think that it's just, on the whole, a much more improved product, and I really compliment the engineers on it. So now I think what we're all waiting for is to actually see what the on-track performance is like for these pedals. Now they came in on Wednesday, today is Saturday. On Wednesday I was able to assemble the pedals together, that was really easy, and then I was able to hook them up, and right now I'm running them with my G25 or G27 steering wheel, and I removed those pedals and I'm using the USB to connect it to the computer, and then right now I'm going to show you a lap around the racetrack with the new pedals, and we're going to compare it using data with some old previous recorded data that I have from before I was even thinking about buying new pedals. So we'll be able to see quantitatively what the improvement is. Okay, so basically my experiment today, I think I'm going to do a couple laps at Sebring in the Aston Martin DBR9. The reason I chose this is because I actually have some recorded data from the DBR9 from maybe a month ago. And at that time, I wasn't even thinking about changing the pedals or really changing my style a lot. And the DBR9 is a new car to me. I only purchased it a little bit ago. And I was having a very hard time driving on it actually in the G27. And a lot of brake lockup and a lot of mistakes, and my pace is actually pretty far off. So I'm actually very curious to see if we can get any improvement on that, especially in the brake lockup, and see if I can get any better with it.
I guess now everybody would like to know what the pedals really feel like, and I gotta tell you, they feel pretty fantastic. I think this brake pedal is really a quantum leap forward from the potentiometer spring pedal, and it really does feel a lot more like a real race car. There is, I guess, a little bit of a lack in the feel of it really being a hydraulic damper. I know that they sell a separate hydraulic damper for the V3 pedals for something like $70, and that people do recommend that. And I imagine that you would feel that that is probably the ultimate reproduction of a real-life brake pedal. But you would probably only really feel that when you jump off of the brake pedal. There really should be a little bit of a damped release. But in the brake application, these feel really dead on. That part, I really don't think that it's lacking in any single way. Now, as I make my lap around Sebring, I'm definitely feeling like, I'm not having as much brake lockup, especially initially. Right now, I'm maybe not as comfortable as I will be later on with these brake pedals. I feel like my braking distance is a little bit long, and maybe I'm having to brake in a little bit too early. But I really think that that's going to come with experience and a little bit more laps. I think that's really going to get a lot better. Again, I've only had these for a couple days, and all in all, just a few laps around the racetrack. I assembled them Wednesday night and had a little bit of practice the other morning before going to work. But I'm really happy with the way that they feel right now, and I think that it's really going to be a real big improvement later on. I feel that the gas pedal is maybe a little bit too long of a throw, and that really isn't meant to be adjusted. But just by looking at it, I think I am going to be able to shorten it. I'm just going to put a longer rubber stop at the back of the throttle pedal, so I don't feel like that's going to be too much of an issue for me. I'm just going to mod it myself. Okay, so we're back hot off the racetrack. Just did a couple of laps just to get a lap in, and then I pulled up an old lap. This one is from October 9th, and I managed to just do about 2 time laps, and then I guess I wasn't feeling it. So we're gonna compare that. Today I did a 58.1, back then it was a 58.7, and I think it's really important that these are pretty raw laps. So this is, far from perfect. This is definitely very raw comparison of just, the first couple laps on the racetrack, and I think that maybe will help us analyze and compare the 2 pedal sets and make it maybe a little bit more obvious. So let's go ahead and analyze the lap. We'll start towards the beginning of the lap, so the first braking zone, and we'll see what we find. So, already you can see a big difference. So the main lap, the reference lap, is going to be the one that we did with the new pedals today. And the white trace, that's going to be from October 9th using the G27. And what you notice here is that there's a big peak with the old pedals, and then it quickly drops off, and then very low brake pressure after that. That is a characteristic that I saw very, very frequently before with the potentiometer, and I was always actually really trying to get rid of that, and it was very, very difficult for me. And I feel like really I was losing a lot of braking potential because of that. It feels like maybe it was just the momentum of me applying the brakes so hard and so fast that my foot would kind of overshoot the correct position that I wanted to be at, and then basically this is just my foot exceeding that point and then coming back, and that's a little bit of an issue because of the fact that it causes brake lockup just for an instant there, and once you get that brake lockup, then you have to kind of get off of it and release brake pressure so you can get the wheels rolling again, and it really just makes the whole braking phase really ugly. So what we see here is that this is much better. I mean, clearly I overshot the brake zone, I think. I braked a little bit too late, but you see that the ramp angle here of the braking is a lot smoother. You don't see any big peak, and then you see that I can modulate the brake, and I'm just gently going down. You can see this is the steering trace in the green, and I'm already kind of turning into the corner. So as I'm turning in, I'm unwinding or reducing the brake pressure until I get off of the brakes completely around here. All the meanwhile, I'm also starting to come up with a throttle, and then I reach full throttle here. The other area that we're going to look at is just the G circle here, and I can see that this is much better. You can see that the red trace is much further towards the outside of the circle and making much more use of the available grip, especially on that turn-in. So I think maybe I missed the brake point maybe a little bit, but I think that it definitely will be a case where, let's see, I mean, it seems like I was able to get on the throttle sooner, even though in the old reference I braked earlier and got on the throttle later. So definitely was able to go through turn 1 a lot faster just now. And again, the setup, I mean, I only just started working with these load cell pedals, and I have no clue how to set them up correctly in the software and how to calibrate and everything. So this was like a little bit of an odd thing, getting like a little bit of brake pressure where there really should be none. And I wonder why that is, but I'll look into that later. But just interesting that still, like, it's not exactly perfectly set up yet, but I'm still very happy with it, and the lap is still pretty fast for me anyway. So now we're looking at lap 2, or turn 2. And again, I really like the shape of this brake application. The ramp angle was, you know, not too bad in the reference lap, but again, you see where on the white trace we get a little bit of a dip, like there's a little bit of a spike and then a quick drop off in brake pressure. And you don't see that with the Fanatic pedal. Here I'm holding relatively even pressure while the steering wheel is still straight. And around this point is where you can see I'm starting to turn in. And there I'm starting to release the brakes. I come off the brakes a little bit abruptly, it seems, but that's okay. Still, we look at the G circle over here, and it seems like I'm getting a little bit better usage of the... You can see over here, right here, the red is further towards the outside of the reference lap. So this transition where you're still hard on the brakes and starting to turn in has been a little bit of a struggle with the potentiometer brakes. And this is really showing me an improvement where I'm able to actually get a little bit more out of the available grip of the tires. So this should be turn 3, I believe now. The braking here seems relatively similar, although you can see I did manage to get off the brakes a little bit sooner, and then a little bit of a kick to the throttle, another little kick, and then was able to reach full throttle a little bit sooner. So then we're going to carry more speed down the straightaway. So that looks pretty good. So this is a big brake zone right here, going into turn 4, the hairpin, the first one. So this is going to be an important area to look and see how the car behaves. And again, you can see the brake application is just a little bit smoother. That initial spike is smaller, and you see it's a lot straighter. It's a little bit more of a square brake trace. And that's really what we're looking for because of the fact that the Aston Martin does not have a lot of downforce. If you were driving a Formula 1 car, perhaps you would have to be reducing brake pressure even while you're still going straight. But in the Aston Martin, while the steering wheel over here is relatively straight, really you should be kind of at your maximum brake pressure and modulating and trying to keep any brake lockup from happening. But other than that, it should be more or less constant, and that definitely is seen here in the reference lap, but not in the other lap. You see with the G27, it seems like, you know, I have a case where I apply a lot of brake force, and then my foot kind of comes off of it, and then it goes back on, and right here, I guess I had a big brake lockup. You can see the tires locked up, and right here I'm showing wheel speeds, and I had a big lockup. And then that's probably where I release the brake a little bit and then have to reapply it. And then a big brake lockup on the inside wheel as I start to turn in. But I was able to get on the throttle pretty efficiently. Actually, it seems like the reference lap I was able to get it on the throttle a little bit better. But all in all, it seems like maybe I braked a tad bit too late today. But again, you just, I have to get up to speed and get some rhythm in. And also getting used to the new pedals. But you can see this pedal shape is wildly different from what I was able to do with the G27. So let's go down the straightaway and go to the next corner. And again, today I've just been missing my brake points, I guess, but I've definitely been braking a few meters later, and it's not been costing me too much. So basically, again, I see a nice smooth brake application. I managed to hit almost 80% brake here, and then a small flat section right here where I was able to hold, it looks like the 70% brake pressure, and then started releasing as I turn in. And you can see in our friction circle that again I'm just able to achieve a little bit more efficient use of the available grip. It's this transition period as we go from full longitudinal acceleration to lateral acceleration. This is a lot nicer looking. This is more towards the edge of the circle, which is exactly where we want it to be. So that's a big deal to me, that I was able to progressively get on the throttle and go to full throttle. So that looks very good. That's a much more improved corner. So going to the next turn, again, this is what turn is this? So this is that fast right-hander that we kind of slow down while also turning the steering wheel. So that's a challenging corner, usually leads to a lot of brake lockup. Again, so I braked a little bit later, and then it has a very nice shape, was able to hold between 66 and 63% brake pressure for quite a bit before I start releasing. I was able to get off the brakes a little bit sooner and get back to throttle a little bit sooner. So our exit speed was a little bit faster through this turn. That looks really good. The friction circle looks about the same. So that corner seemed okay friction wise, but I do think that maybe we gained some time here just braking a little bit later but more efficiently, and then getting off the brakes sooner and back to throttle sooner. So usually that's a recipe for a really fast turn. Wow, big difference here. This is going into the fast right-left hander section, and the brake here looks completely different. This is much smoother application of the brake. Look at this huge spike with the G27. I hit 94%, really hard on the brakes, huge spike, and then I come off the brakes, and there was a big brake lockup there that time. And this is just very typical braking with the potentiometer and the spring. But this is much nicer looking, just general less brake, but more consistent. So my peak braking here was 60% with the load cell pedal, and then just gently trailing off. I carried just a little bit more brake here, which helps keep the nose obviously down and loaded. And our friction circle also validates that. Look, you see here where the spike is, and I had like a big, I hit a really high longitudinal G, but then it kind of comes back, and then you can't really keep that type of loading. But the red trace is much nicer and a little bit towards the outside of the reference of the other lap. So this looks a lot better still. Going into the second to last corner, a little bit less brake application here. That looks pretty good. Just a little less brake being used, and got on the throttle a little bit sooner. So that's also going to be very good. It's funny, the speed didn't carry. I wonder why. It looks like I wasn't able to, maybe didn't get the car slowed down or putting it in right, but I wasn't able to get the throttle soon enough in the previous corner. So the speed wasn't the same, but here I braked a little bit later and braked a little bit less and was able to get the throttle sooner and harder. So I do have the speed down the straightaway. And now we're going to go down the long back straightaway, and we'll see how we turn into the last corner at Sebring. And again, it just looks a little bit nicer. I see the friction circle works towards the outside, so we're pulling more lateral and longitudinal G. And this brake trace looks a little bit flatter, and I'm holding more brake through this phase of the turn and just very progressively coming off of it. It looks nicer than the white line. Here you see a big spike, and then it goes down to, it goes from a peak of 72% down very quickly down to 35, where with the Fanatic pedals, my peak was 53, and around the same time it goes down to 47. So I'm able to have a little bit more consistent brake pressure, and then the release was around the same place. So look at this, the speed, the deceleration is just a little bit smoother, a little bit more gradual. At the end, at the same point, I end up matching the same speed, so more efficient braking, and then I end up getting to throttle a little bit sooner. You can see right here, I start picking up the throttle, and I don't really get to full throttle 100% at the same time, and I give a little bit of a lift there for maybe like a bump or two, but was able to get to throttle sooner. So again, this is another corner where we made up some time. In general, I mean, I'm pretty pleased. I hadn't had a chance to look at this data, but look at the friction circle. You can definitely see a big difference in this area of the friction circle towards the little edges where, you know, like if it was a clock, I would say if, you know, braking, hard braking would be at the 6 o'clock position. With the new load cell pedals, we're filling in more space in the 4 and 5 o'clock region and the 7 and 8 o'clock region down to the bottom of the circle. That's really looking a lot more filled in than what I'm typically used to seeing. So I'm very pleased with that. There you have it. I think that's pretty raw data, and it really shows the difference of just same driving style, same driver, same track, same car, and you can see what the brake application is doing. It really behaves completely differently, and then comparing it to my real life experience, I think that this is something that I think is more analogous to real life. I think it's more useful to compare, and I think that now personally my practice on the iRacing is going to be a little bit more valuable because I will be able to work on my driving technique. And I think I'll be more confident that that those changes in my technique are going to be able to carry over to real life. So I'm very happy, very pleased with how they performed. So there you have it. It turns out that the new pedals actually do make a difference, a real tangible difference to your driving. And I think you'll see the difference on the racetracks. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like this type of video, let me know what you thought, and maybe I'll be able to do some more in the future. Until then, I'll see you next time.